All right, welcome. My name is Andrea Crisp. Welcome to EFT for COVID-19, tapping amidst uncertainty. And myself and then Chris, who will be joining us, Chris Mandeville, have been doing these calls now for a couple of weeks. This is our fourth one. We're going to be doing these every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And we're going to be doing some group tapping in the beginning, and then we'll be taking a volunteer for the second half. And the volunteer piece will not be recorded, just to protect people's privacy, so people aren't worried about talking about what's really going on for them. Don't want the recording aspect to get in the way for anyone. So these will be put up on a YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, and we've started a Facebook group. Originally, we were having people register for the call, and I was sending out a follow-up email, but we were having problems with people getting into the call, and Zoom is pretty overwhelmed right now. So I have a support ticket out there, but I haven't heard anything, even though I'm a paying client. So we took away the registration, and hopefully that's going to make it easier for some people to get in, because we've had some login issues on some of the earlier calls. So welcome, and thanks for joining us. My name is Andrea. As I said, I'm a certified and accredited EFT practitioner with EFT International. It is one of my favorite self-help tools. I've been using it myself since 2006 and got my first training in 2011. But I actually started using it with clients in 2009, so I've been using it for quite a while. It's one of my favorite tools, so I'm happy to share it with you. And that's really the point behind this. Chris and I really wanted to get this tool into as many hands as possible during this pandemic, because there is so much stress and uncertainty that's going on for everyone. And once you really learn how to do this, you can do it on your own. You don't need a practitioner to do it as well. So I love it because it's so empowering. So we're going to start just with an overview of what to expect. So introductions, which I've already done, but we're going to do some group tapping. We've been doing some different global group tapping exercises each week, but there's only a handful of those, so at some point we'll probably end up repeating, but it will teach you some good alternative ways to use tapping. And then when we're done with that group tapping, we'll take Q&A, any questions from anybody before we bring in and ask for a volunteer. And of course, there's Q&A at the end too, but we won't be recording that. So we'll stop the recording after we do the Q&A with the group tapping session, and then ask for a volunteer. So if anybody here is new to EFT and you've never done it before, I am going to put a link in the chat. This is my tapping chart that shows the points. And so if you click on that, it'll just automatically download the PDF from my website. Normally when there's two of us here, we have one of us doing points that don't include the face and one doing the regular points because of the virus and the concern with touching your face. So just know that I have washed my hands, and I'm going to be touching my face when I'm tapping. And when Chris arrives, then we'll switch back, where we'll have one person showing the points without touching on the face, and one doing the regular points as well. And the other thing I like to always suggest is to have some water, or at least a decaffeinated beverage. Water is the best, but anytime you're doing energy work, staying hydrated is really important. So make sure that you're hydrated. And then the other thing I want to mention is that in EFT, we have the setup statement, and we say these things, and we're tapping along, but the real juice is in the tapping. So if you get flooded at any point where you start feel yourself getting really emotional, just keep tapping. You don't have to talk. You don't have to say the words. If you're already tuned into your emotion and it's that heightened, then the words aren't necessary at that point. When we're doing the regular talking, it's to help our energy system and our body tune into what the problem is. But if you're already feeling, so angry that steam is coming out of your ears, or tears are streaming down your face because you're that in tune with your sadness or grief, then there's no reason to speak. You can just tap. So just keep tapping. And if you really are overwhelmed and you can't even remember all the points to tap, you can just pick one point that's your favorite and tap that. So it's really that simple. Just keep tapping if you start to get yourself really overwhelmed. And I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything since I don't have my sidekick here at this point. So to explain, Chris started a new job last week and his training was in Salem. So last week he actually was staying down in Salem on his own dime, so he didn't have to drive back and forth. And they were supposed to be back up here this week, but that's not the case. He's actually down there again, but he's not in an Airbnb. So this week he's driving back and forth. So he will be joining us, but he will be late. So he will hop on as soon as he is able to. And meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and get started. So for those who are not familiar, we're going to be tapping on the side of the hand, top of the head, and then the face points are the eyebrows right here on the end of the eyebrow, side of the eye, under the nose, chin point, and then the collarbone. So when the collarbone starts to come together, there's a point on either side just below the bones there. And so you can do this, you can use two hands like this, whatever you are comfortable with. And then under the arm, so it's not in the armpit, it's down from that. For women, it's where the bra line is. And then I also do a point that most people don't do, and that is the wrist points. And so I like to do the front of one wrist to the back of the other and then switch back and forth. And this gets all of the meridian points that are in the fingers, the hand points that some people might be familiar with from the original full recipe EFT. But so that's a quick way to get those points back in. So that's one of the things I like to do. So if you don't want to touch your face, you're going to do top of the head and then skip down to the collarbone point here. And then the liver point, which is under the breast at the bottom of the rib cage. So you can do two-handed if you want, or just like this, whatever feels comfortable for you. And then under the arm and the wrist points for people who don't want to touch their face while you're doing this, just to show those to you quickly. But I'll be doing the full points, and when Chris arrives, one of us will do the full. Usually it's him, and I do the not touching the face points. So with all of that, just to get people thinking, we were going to ask for a volunteer tonight if anyone is having trouble sleeping, but I realized that we don't have as many people on tonight's call, so that might not be your issue. So if there isn't anybody who wants to volunteer to work on issues sleeping, then we'll just work with taking a volunteer for whatever's showing up in the room. But this intro for the group tapping, I wanted to teach you how to do something called tapping and breathing, and it's just that simple. It really is that simple. So like I said earlier, the real benefit in tapping is actually tapping, and so you don't always have to say the setup statement and say all the words that we normally do. So what I would like you to do at this point is start tapping on the side of the hand point. If you don't like this point, an alternative is there are what are called tender spots or sore spots. We have all these lymph glands here, and that they can be sore on most of us. And so that's an alternative point for the beginning point, is to just rub in on one of these sore spots. But most people use the side of the hand. So just start tapping on the side of the hand gently and look around the room and just let your eyes rest on something that you really like. If there's something that you find beautiful, or something that has a good memory for you, or maybe something that's your favorite color, just look at that for a moment. And make sure you're taking nice, big, deep breaths while you're doing this. And if there's any sounds in the room or sounds outside that you can hear, focus on the sounds. Any smells that you might have. Just using your senses to bring you into the room. And so after doing a little bit of orienting, now we're just going to go through all the tapping points, and on each point, you're simply going to gently and deeply take a nice breath. So top of the head, And just breathe deeply. And exhale. And just observe. We're going to move to the eyebrow point. And again, nice, gentle, and deep breaths. And outside of the eye. Again, breathing on each point. Just observing what it feels like. Hopefully you can feel yourself arriving in the room, settling down from any stress from your day. Chin points. Moving on to the collarbone. Deep breath and exhale. Under the arm, breathe deep. And exhale. And Chris is here. Let me let him in. Again, just take a nice deep breath. And that was the first round. We're going to do one more round as we go through and just breathing deeply on each point. So top of the head, take a nice deep breath. And again, we're just tapping and breathing. This is one of the best ways to help bring down your stress levels. Just take a nice deep breath on each point. Welcome, Chris. I'll give you a moment to get settled. Moving to under the eye. And you can breathe in and out through your mouth or through your nose or a mixture of both. Whatever's feeling the most comfortable and relaxing to you. The point is just tapping and taking a deep breath. Moving to the collarbone. And just helping yourself breathe and ground. Moving to under the arm. All right. So the purpose of that tapping and breathing is really just to help bring you present into the room, into your body. We tend to be upper chest breathers in our society, but especially when we're stressed out, we're not getting full deep breaths. And so this just helps calm and regulate your whole nervous system along with your breath. The fastest way to actually have an impact is by doing some deep breathing. And if you can add tapping to that, it's even better. And so just to bring you up to speed, Chris, we just did 2 rounds of just tapping and breathing to bring everybody here and into the room. So how are people feeling? Go ahead and throw that into the chat. And are you noticing any improvement from when you first started and got into the room after doing just 2 rounds of tapping and breathing? Feel free. Nice. Angel says, more relaxed and a little sleepy. Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really common with EFT for people to yawn as a release. People get sleepy. People might burp actually, or I've actually had someone who was a laugher as they were releasing, which was pretty fun. They kept apologizing to me, and I kept reminding them that I teach laughter yoga, and there was no reason for them to apologize for laughing. So there's lots of ways that people might see themselves releasing any negative energy. Mira says she feels less stressed. Excellent, excellent. Jody says she feels like she's unwinding, but she didn't even know that she needed to unwind. That's one of the great things, and one of the reasons we do these global tapping, group tapping before we get started and ask for volunteers, because it really helps bring you into the room. And a lot of times we're carrying so much stress and things we don't realize that we're even carrying with us until we slow down and give ourselves a moment to check in, and then it becomes clear, like, oh wow, I'm actually really frustrated today, and I was like trying to kind of squash that, or I'm feeling sad, or whatever the things are that are happening. So Pam says she was getting lots of yawns. Yeah, that's the most common, is people get a lot of yawns when they're doing EFT, but it can look different. So if anybody's releasing it in a different way, there's nothing wrong with you. It's normal and natural. All right, so that is the end of our just our beginning group tapping. And so I was tapping and showing all of the points, but when we go on to doing the volunteer, I will switch to doing the points where I'm not touching the face, and Chris will be doing the points where he's touching the face, so that you can follow along with either one of us, depending on what you are comfortable with. So welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks. I'm glad to be here. Andrea told you, but I took a new job, and so I had a little bit of a commute today, and so arriving a little late, but really glad to be here. And that little bit of breathing and tapping really helped me kind of unwind from my my drive too. So that was nice.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So at this point, this is just where we take a little Q&A. If anybody just has, general questions about EFT or ways to use EFT. Is anybody here brand new to EFT or tapping, or does everyone have a little bit of introduction before? I think we might have a little bit of a mix. Yeah, Gary is new. So welcome, Gary. I'm so excited that you're here to learn some tapping with us.
And then maybe even share like what made you decide to connect tonight? Like what are your intentions for this session? If you feel like sharing something like that, if you want us to learn more about EFT, or if you have something specific you want to work on.
Yeah.
Exploration, Gary.
Exploration. Yeah, just here to see what it's all about. All right, so in this next section, we're gonna ask for a volunteer. I threw out the idea for sleep, if people are having issues around sleep. But if nobody on the call actually has that, and there's something else that's coming up, feel free to throw out some of the things that you're struggling with right now, because we're going to be taking a volunteer here in a few minutes. But I wanted to talk about what we're actually going to be doing when we're tapping with a volunteer, because even though you might not be the person who is the volunteer in front of the room, you can borrow benefits. And so this is something that we do in EFT that's really actually very cool. You do not have to be tapping on your specific thing. So whoever the volunteer is, and Chris will be working with the volunteer tonight, we'll all just repeat what the volunteer is saying, and they're tapping, and tap along with them and say exactly what they're saying. And even still, we'll get usually some movement, and often even resolution on our own issue. And so this is called borrowing benefits. So even if you are not the person who's the volunteer, you can just take note of kind of what your concern is right now, what the negative emotion is that you want to address, whether it's that you're feeling sad or angry or scared or stressed, whatever the word is you might use to describe that. And you can make a note, whether that's a mental note or you want to just jot that down. And then we use something called SUDS, subjective units of distress. It's like that continuum that they show you if you're at the doctor and you're in pain or something, and they show you like the smiley face on one end and then the really upset face on the other end. So it's on a scale of 0 to 10, how intense is that emotion? So Sally says that she is an essential worker and has anxiety before her shift. So yeah, so basically you would say, okay, the emotion is anxiety. How intense is that? It's feeling like an 8 right now, or whatever that is, and just make note of that, even if you aren't the person who's the volunteer. And then at the end, you can check back in and see if you've had any movement on your issue, even if you weren't the person who was the volunteer in front of the room. Does anybody have any questions about borrowing benefits or anything else to do with EFT? I'm gonna move my chair a little closer here.
Yeah, it looks like Sally's volunteering. It's a good topic. If anyone has anything else, feel free to share it. Like, you don't have to be the volunteer. You can just share what it is that you're dealing with right now, and then maybe the intensity of that if you feel comfortable. And then at the end, when we're done, we'll just kind of check in on those and see where you're at on those, because we're gonna ask everyone to tap along with whoever the volunteer is, like Andrea said, and see what results they get. So looks like Sally, huh, Andrea?
Yeah.
Okay. Sally, do you feel comfortable volunteering? And we'll put you on video and unmute your mic.
I had a question, actually, because I work with folks with physical and mental cognitive disabilities, and clients who have anxiety at this time and with their motor skills are really limited. And I was just wondering, for instance, there's this one client who only has usage of his one hand, and that's all he can move. And if there's anything that would be helpful, he's pretty open to natural things and like Reiki and so forth. And I was just wondering anything, any recommendations on tapping for him.
So does he have full use of that arm? The one arm?
As much as, for example, he can eat with a spoon by himself independently. So, he has that kind of motion.
Okay. Because you can just, like I was showing, like I was tapping with 2 hands sometimes, but you don't have to. You can do just one. And I mentioned that I use the wrist points. And the reason I do that is because there's meridians that run down through the fingers and the wrist. But the original, what's called the full recipe for EFT, includes tapping on finger points. And so that might be something that he can do. Often people will tap like this using 2 hands, but you can actually use your thumb, and the points are right off to the side here. I'm going to get a little closer. It's just the side of the fingernail here. And so you can actually use your thumb and you can tap on the side of the fingernail with one thumb. So I don't know if he would have the movement and dexterity to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. But those are some other points. And the side of the hand point, if he can only use the one arm, he can actually tap that on his leg or on the side of, a chair or something, the tabletop, something else, or just part of his body like this. So that's some of the ideas. Do you have any other thoughts, Chris, to share about?
Not really. It's a great question. I have heard also of people like kind of tapping. I don't know what they call it. Is it imaginary tapping, Andrea?
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to suggest.
Yeah, where you're actually imagining yourself tapping instead of actually doing the physical tapping. But it sounds like if this person can move their one hand, they can certainly tap. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to get more of a feel for the placements with the one hand and to make use of what he has. Thank you.
Yeah, so if he can't reach, say he can't reach all the way up to tap on, the top of his head or something like that, whatever points he can do would be beneficial. So you don't have to necessarily do all of them to be able to get the benefits. And for me personally, I have certain points that tend to be the points that work really well for me, that I tend to always release stuff on certain points. And so that could be something that as you introduce it to him, he may start to notice that, like, oh, well, I really like this point the best, and it's really easy for me to be able to reach and to tap on this point. And so maybe that's the one that he uses and isn't trying to use the whole sequence if that's difficult for him. But I threw out the sleeping issue because I have sleep issues. And so that's why I thought Chris should be the person to volunteer to tap with someone, since that's not his issue, it's my issue. But
Angel says
but I say that, oh yeah, Angel, I hear you. But I bring that up because when I'm laying in bed and not sleeping in the middle of the night, and my husband is one of those people who's like, head on the pillow and he's out like in like a minute, which I'm so jealous of. But I often am just imagining that I'm tapping on the points when I'm trying to help myself fall asleep, and I'm not actually tapping on them, because that would be really annoying to my partner if I was doing this while I was laying in bed. He'd be like, "What are you doing? Stop wiggling around." So just to say that there's a lot of power in our intentions, and so just intending that that's where you're putting your attention and your energy has a lot to do with it as well. So yeah.
And I same thing. If I can't go to sleep, sometimes I'll just tap on my collarbone just the whole time, just tapping while I'm in my head saying things. So
yeah.